Okay, distinguished guests and colleagues, it is an honor to stand before you and address you on the topic of green hydrogen, or hydrogen in general. So I'm going to apologize in advance, Denver. I think I'm going to go slightly over. So, you've introduced me. So I come from Thyssenkrupp AG. We're a global company. We have about 160,000 employees in 70 locations across the globe. We're best known for our innovative thinking and our expert execution. And it's important because it comes, you've got to take that into account when you talk about the renewable space. So we've been in sub-Saharan Africa since 1959. As a proudly environmentally conscious company, our focus has grown. We've been combining our experience, our expertise, our technologies, and recently we've become the proud owner of a large amount of green process technologies. So we'd like to think ourselves as a bit unique. We deliver end-to-end solutions in the green hydrogen value chain. And our purpose, if you look at us anywhere on the website, we want to create a livable planet. So we live in extremely exciting times where leaders, members of public, more importantly the youth, and the community stakeholders are asking for a greener and more sustainable planet. With every day that passes, there is increased pressure and emphasis on the phasing out of fossil fuels and greenhouse emitting industries. We have two of the largest CO2 emitting industries residing in sub-Saharan Africa. The pressure is here. However, we are faced with the dilemma of high unemployment, lack of industrialization, and other socio-economic issues. So what we need a unified approach. So although hydrogen is well known, it's actually unfortunate that we don't have appreciable movement, and there has always been a lack of decisive action to take it forward. But what we as a company, what we've seen, that this is rapidly changing. Governments worldwide are prioritizing net zero emissions. There's also the plummeting cost of renewable power that's improving the attractiveness for green hydrogen production. Ongoing innovation sees that the cost of electrolyzers are coming down. We've seen a drop in the electrolyzer costs of approximately 10% per year for the last 3 years. So we performed a recent study at Thyssenkrupp, Uhde, and it estimates that the total landing cost of green hydrogen exported from Namibia is 10% lower than its closest competitor. I see the slides haven't. No, don't worry. Oh. Okay. There seems to be an issue. It's loaded in the back. Okay, so it's 10% lower than its closest competitor, and that competitor is Saudi Arabia. So this is very important when we look at Namibia, because if you look at Saudi Arabia, it's a desert country, but yet we find that Namibia is 10% lower, and that's because of the combination of the wind and the solar. Everyone talks about Namibia's favorable wind and solar pattern. And you see it in the cost coming out that it can be 10% lower than the Saudi Arabians. And this actually positions Namibia as a global player in the green hydrogen value chain. So the production of hydrogen by electrolysis, which we do, is well proven. So if you look at Thyssenkrupp, we've been producing hydrogen for more than 50 years by the chlor-alkali process. The technology has adapted to electrolyze water, like we spoke about, and it has a TRL, a technology readiness level of 9. So what does that mean? I think it's important to talk about that. If you look at a TRL, you've got a range from 1 to 9. When you talk 1, it's at its infancy, it's being researched. And what does 9 mean? So a TRL is used by leading organizations like NASA to evaluate whether they're ready to launch something. So there's no risks with the technology. So a large appetite for green hydrogen exists in Europe. One such driver is the green steel. So Europe is looking at decarbonizing their green steel markets. At the Thyssenkrupp steel mill, it's expected that they will use 720,000 tons per year by 2050 of hydrogen to decarbonize that market. That's about 7.5 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity. And who are they going to look at? The whole of Europe is looking at the likes of Namibia for this. And it's just simply due to the landing costs and the ability for the likes of Namibia to meet sustainable production rates. So the transport of hydrogen is not without problems. So I don't like to look at it as problems. When we look at it as problems, it almost infers that you can't solve it. So I like to look at it as opportunities, because these problems, there are solutions for it. And when we look at the solutions, it's opportunities for employment. So if you look at the transport of hydrogen, hydrogen occupies large amounts of volume and it requires compression for transport. So containment at these high pressures requires specialized materials. So there are alternatives that everyone's looking at. One such alternative is the liquefaction of hydrogen. But this is very energy intensive. Another way of transporting hydrogen is what we call LOHC. That's liquid organic hydrogen carriers. However, it's also energy intensive and it remains at its infancy. So the best way is looking at green ammonia. It's considered to be the most feasible way to transport hydrogen along long distances. And this technology has been used for decades, licensed by Thyssenkrupp and others. The benefits for the conversion of hydrogen to green ammonia is immediate for the African continent. Green ammonia is used for the production of fertilizers, and then it offers the added benefit of decarbonizing the food value chain. It's unfortunate when I say this. Africa, although abundant in agricultural land, remains one of the least fertilized continents in the world. So the other option for green hydrogen is the shipping sector. We spoke about it, I'm not going to go into it. But if we look at ammonia, it's important to note that it's dubbed as one of the top 3 alternate fuels for 2050. And the usage is expected to grow by at least 7% to 2030, and then exponentially between 2030 and 2050. So if we look at Namibia, what does it mean for Namibia? Namibia can capitalize by bunkering the ammonia as fuel for the shipping industry. Now, green hydrogen is the enabler for the green value chain. And I don't have the slide up, so I'm not going to go through that. But, you know, green hydrogen is used to create a suite of products, including green ammonia, green methanol, synthetic fuels, amongst others. These value chains, once unlocked, create economic potential for Namibia and the African continent. So whilst there are challenges with respect to the scale-up of green hydrogen production, Namibia, we find, is well placed to address them, unlike their major competitors. So if we look at the high production cost of green hydrogen, the production cost of green hydrogen compared to your fossil-based hydrogen labs. And when I talk about that, I talk about like the ESCOMs who are using coal-fired stations and those sort of producers of electricity. So the renewable pricing has to come down below $20 per megawatt for hydrogen production to become cost competitive. When we look at Namibia's favorable solar and wind resources holds the key to this problem. So that combination actually facilitates this process. Then there's the unsecured demand. The development of the hydrogen economy requires investment commitments from both the producers and the consumers. In the absence of offtake agreements, this still remains risky. But we know that Namibia is working on the legislative framework and policies, and this will facilitate this. There are environmental concerns that we spoke about. And I look at this as employment opportunities. We know that if you look at the other competitors, I'm going to wrap up. If you look at other competitors, they are for water, but then we produce brine, and brine lends itself to problems with the ocean. But there are solutions for this. You have injection wells where you can deposit the brine. So there's always solutions. And lastly, when I talk about local manufacturing, when we talk at these hydrogen conferences, especially in Africa, the biggest thing that comes across is how do we manufacture locally? And we need to be discerning when we talk about this, what we manufacture locally. When you look at the core technology components, those have already been outsourced and they are manufactured globally at competitive rates. But the technology that surrounds the green hydrogen, green ammonia, and the whole suite is just a small component of what's there. There's a larger balance of plant component, and that's what we need to look at, the immediate benefits of that, because the skills and expertise exist in this continent, they exist in Namibia, and that's what we need to look at. And I'm actually going to leave it there because I was told I need to stop. Thank you.